Hey folks, like a lot of you, I am really keen to see what the Z8 is going to bring if and when it finally gets announced. I've been using Z9 since the day that they were released. My pair now have hundreds of thousands of frames on them and hundreds of hours of video content as well. Make sure you have subscribed to the channel. As soon as I'm able to get hands-on with the Z8, I will be updating this with hands-on field tested reviews for you guys. Now, in this video, I'm going to run through the 3 different overall strategies or routes I think they can go with the Z8, and then the 10 or 11 different points that I would personally like to see integrated into it. First off, the 3 different routes I think they can take. First is going for a portrait camera to sit alongside the Z9. So think of like the D850 versus the D5. You had a much higher res sensor, a slower camera, on paper the same autofocus system, but in reality it didn't quite keep up, but a similar button layout, similar card options available, and a really nice companion camera to the D5. Next up, they could just make it a mini Z9. Think of like a Nikon D700 versus a Nikon D3. Same sensor, similar kind of specs, but again, slower and with fewer features, but at a much more accessible price point. If they did go that route, I imagine they would really take out a lot of the video features. I think it's going to have less video features anyway, but I'll get to that in my wish list. And the final option would be that they could actually go for a lower res, higher ISO sensitivity camera. Now, I think this is the least likely of the different routes that they could potentially go. I think it'll be one of the other 2. But given that the Nikon Z9 is, high resolution and high speed, and it's pretty much delivering in every technical metric that you can think of, except it doesn't have exceptional ISO performance. So for someone like me, I would actually really like to see an ISO improvement on this upcoming camera. So let me know as a comment, which of those 3 do you think is most likely? The high-res portrait and landscape camera to go alongside a Z9, a mini Z9 with the same sensor, just reduced settings and features, or a lower resolution and a better ISO camera as the 3rd potential option. And if you are in the Nikon Z system, check out my Nikon Z expert setup guide. It takes you through every single camera from APS-C all the way through to the Z9 in full detail, showing you what every physical control does on the camera and how to set it up and customize it and get the most out of it for your style of shooting. And then using the Z9 as a template, because it has the most complex menu system, we go through every single menu option to explain what's there and how to make the most of it. As soon as the Z8 is available, I'll be going through and updating it with the complete guide for that, and that will be included. If you've already purchased the guide, you'll get access to the Z8 as well, and I anticipate that they'll update the Z9 firmware around that time also, so that firmware update will also be included as part of the expert setup guide. Now, let's jump into the, I think, 11 points that I personally would love to see in a Z8, and I want to know what you would like to see, so make sure you leave a comment below. Firstly, an improved EVF. The Z9 EVF is okay, but to be honest, in 2023, it's behind the market, and even for late 2021 when it came out, it was nowhere near cutting edge. Now with the Sony having 9.4 or so megapixel, Canon have great ones as well, I would really like to see this up in the 9 to 10 megapixel range to bring it right up there. People who are saying that they'll never leapfrog over the Z9 have to keep in mind the Z9 is almost 18 months old. That is a considerable amount of time, and I do think it's fair to expect or hope that some of the features will actually surpass the Z9, even though it's a lower priced camera we're anticipating. Secondly, I'd like to see further articulating screens. The Z9, it's brought in some articulation, which is great, and keeping in mind that that kind of integrated grip camera body from Nikon never had an articulating screen, that's already a big step, something like a D850 did. So I would personally like to see that it's able to go out in 90 degrees in every axis. That's really helpful for shooting in the field, and we don't quite have that on the flipping out to the sides axis. I don't need it to come all the way around, it's not a freaking vlogger's camera, but for getting low camera angles, it's really, really helpful. Thirdly, I would personally like to see them go with dual CF Express Type B cards. I think they'll probably go with CF Express and SD, but SD is a mid-range kind of card format. It just can't compete with the performance of CF Express Type B. Let's keep it Pro and keep it with dual CF Express cards. Video. Now, I appreciate if they can't do, 8K, 60p, RAW, and ProRes in a smaller body like that. I'm currently filming in ProRes on both my Z9s, but I would really hope that they're able to retain at least 10-bit 4K 120 and 8K 30. 8K 60 maybe not, but 8K 30p and 4K 120p, I really hope we're going to see those still in the Z8. I also hope that we're going to see a new battery. When they went from the ENEL 15B to C, they went from 1900 milliamp hours to 2280. How about an ENEL 15D that gets it up to 2600? There's, technology is always advancing in batteries just like everything else. A camera like that, if it does have bigger screens and, better processors, it's going to need the extra battery life. I would personally be okay if they gave it an all-new battery, but I know for a lot of people they want to be able to use the batteries they have, and then if you don't want to be carrying 3 different types of batteries with you. 6 and 7 are things that probably no one cares about other than me, or I don't know, but one is more port covers. I pointed this out on the Z9 and people thought I was nitpicking, but to cover the 5 ports it has on the side of the camera, it only has 2 doors. And if you want to, for example, plug USB-C in, then you need to have your HDMI port exposed. If you want to have your microphone or headphones plugged in, you need to have an Ethernet port exposed. That's really not ideal when you're shooting out in extreme conditions in the rain and in the snow. I would like to see them go back to, things like the D5 and D6 that had pretty much individual port door covers. Next up, I really hope that they're going to go for a locking mechanism on the card door, unlike the Z6 and Z7 IIs, but maybe not the exact one that they have on the Z9, because that is quite fiddly even after 15 months of using it. It's a bit of a pain to open, and I've personally had, I think, 3 different people write to me over the last year saying, oh, there's something wrong with my Z9. I sent it back in, the card door wouldn't open. They just couldn't figure out how to unlock it, and then, got a replacement camera only to find there was nothing wrong with it other than how it's been designed. Number 8, an improved sensor. The Z9 sensor is fantastic, but it is a couple of years old now. I really think they're going to go more likely for a higher res sensor, but I would personally rather keep it 40 to 50 megapixel and get an extra stop or 2 of ISO performance. What about you? Number 9, improved autofocus. Now this might surprise you because yes, the Z9 is far and away the best autofocus we've ever had on a Nikon camera. It leaves the Z6 and Z7 in the dust, in a different decade essentially. But again, Sony have the A7R5 out with AI autofocus. The Canon R3 is exceptional. The Z9 is 18 months old. I think there would be nothing wrong with it being leapfrogged with newer autofocus. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a new autofocus module that has more points. The Z9 compared to the other ones in the market has relatively few, and a new software for better algorithms for detection and tracking, and we could see that software rolled out to the Z9s as well. Whilst I think, well, I don't know, but in the past, something like when it is a Z9 and a D5 and a D850, the D5 always actually performs better in the field. If you were comparing like a D4 to a D850, not so much, and there is a fair time difference between these two. Number 10, I would really love to seeing if they are using another sensor that doesn't need a mechanical shutter, that they do put in that sensor cover. That's really great for when I'm shooting in the desert or in inclement weather, to know that when I take my lens off, the sensor has been covered. That's really great. And finally, the price. Z7 Mark II is currently going for around $3,000. It's actually like $2,600 on sale as I record this. And the Z9 is $5,500, $1,000 less than its predecessor, the Nikon D6. So I would really like to see this come in. If they're going to be aggressive with the pricing, $3,500 to $3,700 would be aggressive, and it will sell out and there'll be waiting lists and it'll be crazy. Around $4,000, it's still going to sell out and have waiting lists and be crazy. So basically I would say if when the camera is announced it does meet your expectations, I don't want to be one of those people that encourages you to buy unnecessary things, but I personally know dozens of people who've been holding off moving to mirrorless or not getting a Z9 because they're waiting for this camera. If the specs work for you, I recommend you put in your order straight away. I and others no doubt will get reviews out really quickly, so if if we find something terrible or if it doesn't suit your needs, you can always cancel it. But looking at the Z9, it had such a backlog to get the orders cleared. It basically took 14 months before you could get them in stock to just buy one. And I expect that the Z8 will sell double as many cameras as the Z9 or more. It's a more accessible kind of camera, and if the price does come in at $3,500 to $4,000 US, it's going to be incredibly, incredibly popular. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think they're going to bring out, and what do you hope they're going to include in terms of features? Check out my Nikon Expert Setup Guide. Leave me any questions you have, and I hope you've already, but if you haven't, please do like and subscribe. I'll be bringing out loads of Z8 content as soon as I'm able. Cheers, guys.